Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience Desert Classic DraftKings picks and preview. Remember to smash the like button if you want to get into a draw for $20 DK. Hit that like button, leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section, and tell me your two favorite plays from below $7,000. I was scanning the list. I don't have a ton. Maybe my guest today can shed some insight into that from the Fantasy Golf Bag and the Fantasy Golf Bag podcast. The winner of the 2018 Masters Millionaire Maker on DraftKings, it is Drew Mathews. What's going on, my man?
Not much, man. Pretty exciting to get golf back. Not as exciting for you. You got a baby coming this weekend. But yeah, hopefully you can have a sweat along with that baby sweat.
Well, the last time that I really used baby swag to its full potential, Danny McWillett won the Masters for me. So maybe I can get, I had birthday swag last year when I cleaned up at the Heritage. Maybe baby swag will get me like $50K in the $5 or something like that. I should probably like press this week, right? That's how it works?
I think so. Yeah, it can't hurt. Yeah.
So I'll take the first year of college tuition money and I'll dump it on a DraftKings this week and play every high stakes contest.
Yeah, your wife won't have a problem with that.
Absolutely not. I do want to let everyone know that the Pat Mayo Experience Listeners League filled in 59 minutes yesterday. So, again, it didn't even make it till the time that the video was out. I always tell people that the audio podcast comes out in like an hour and a half before the video because audio is far easier to upload than video is. So, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you can download podcasts, you can get the Pat Mayo Experience for free on there. And the link, the first time that link will appear for next week and every week will be in the audio podcast for the show that Jeff and I do on Monday afternoons. I'm begging DraftKings to expand it to 1,000 people or potentially even more next week because there seems to be a lot of demand for it. We'll review at the very end of the show the winning lineup from Oil_Man, who took down the PME Open last week with a pretty solid lineup and won himself $400. There's 500 entries this week. It's up to $750 for the winner. A very flat payout structure, though. So it's a 3 max. If you just want to play a single entry, it's designed that way that no one's going to come clobber you with a 150 lineup. So it's really open to everyone, $15 to enter. But again, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience and tweet at DraftKings. You tell them to make it bigger because that is the only way. The demand from the people is the only way that we're going to get it to be bigger. Drew, do you want to start with some of the narratives that I have here, or do you just want to talk about the courses and cut line to begin with? Because that's a bit wonky for this tournament.
Yeah, lay it on me. What narratives are you looking at this week?
Okay, so I actually, you know what? I'll start with the courses because it ties into the narratives. We got 3 courses on the go this week. We have the Stadium course, which is a Pete Dye design. It's the hardest of the 3, although last year it didn't play particularly hard. The par 3s, as my main man Matt Wiley had pointed out, are the 3 most difficult holes because there's water all around this course, there's sand all around this course, and if you're ever going to make a big number, it's going to be on those holes. But generally, it's like a pitch and putt, except for some people triple bogey them. So it's not the end of the world for these ones, but the players will see this course twice over the course of the weekend. You have La Quinta, which is by far the easiest of the course. I wouldn't say even by far the easiest of the courses. It's very easy. It was the easiest course on tour last year. The Nicklaus course is in between, but it was 50th of 51st. So it was also incredibly easy last season. So when we look at it, the narratives that I want to get into is that people keep pointing out that the winners generally come from guys that do not start at the tournament course. I have it pulled up here, the stat. Shout out to everyone who really helped me out on Twitter with all this research, so I didn't have to do it. But only 2 of the top 20 in finishers last year started on the Stadium course, and only 5 of 20 in 2017. Would that lead you to fade the guys starting on the tournament course? Because I'm thinking about just full fading that section. It really helps me narrow down my player pool.
I wouldn't full fade, but it's definitely something I'm considering. So I'm definitely trying to eye the guys that are starting on the easier golf courses. I think that builds momentum versus the guy that starts on the tough course. He gets off to a bad start. It's really tough to kind of recreate the momentum. So I'm not going to full fade for sure. I haven't seen the tee times, actually. I know you just posted it, but I'm not going to full fade.
Yeah, so if you go to my Twitter, I actually posted a list of the guys all starting at the tournament course, and I bolded some of the names that I think that were in consideration for me. I don't know if they would have made a lineup or not, but the guys that I was kind of eyeing a little bit. So here are the notable names starting on the tournament course. Russell Knox, Johnny Vegas, Sebastian Munoz, Tom Hoagie, Sam Ryder, who I bet before I saw the tee times, but I can't cash out my bet now, so I'm riding with Sam Ryder. JT Poston, Chesson Hadley, Bill Haas, Hunter Mahan. Adam Hadwin, Chris Kirk, James Hahn, Brian Harmon, Nick Watney, and Herban Lahiri, Anders Albertson, who I had liked as a sleeper this week, probably not going to make the teams, Peter Uline, JJ Spawn, Sean Stephanie, Kevin Streelman, Charles Schwartzel, Charlie Hoffman, Carlos Ortiz, and George Cunningham are the ones, and John Catlin too, who's the Asian player coming over to play for his first start in North America on the PGA Tour. They all unfortunately draw the stadium course first. And now I was looking at the wind for the week. It seems like it's going to be at its most impactful on Thursday and a little bit on Saturday as well. So it seems like the optimal time to play the stadium course is going to be on Friday, which means I believe that is anyone who starts on the Nicklaus course will play on Saturday. So a wind affects the stadium course more than the other two courses by what Adam Hadwin said. Shout out to Josh Culp for some of the quotes on that, but it just plays more into that narrative that I think I'm just going to full fade the tournament guy or the stadium course guys starting on Thursday and just see how that works out.
Yeah, you were running down the list, and I was pretty much off all those guys except for two. I had Munoz. I was going to try to chase a little bit after last week, even though he gained a bunch of strokes putting. And then Mr. George Cunningham, I thought was going to be sneaky, and I might have to pull the trigger on him anyways.
Yeah,
I thought the only two.
I thought Cunningham and Albertson were two of the guys, and I like the rebound for Sam Ryder, but I still think that's a better value in the betting market at 140 to 1 than it is on DraftKings anyway. It just seems like a weird price for a guy who was like hot fire through the swing season, had one bad week, and now everyone in the world is off of him. I do like his fit for this course, do not like the setup, so he'll stay away from my DraftKings lineup. So those are the narratives just to begin with, and for the full course rotation, if you start at the stadium course, you then go La Quinta and then tournament. If you start at La Quinta, you get the Nicklaus course second, the stadium course third, and then if you start at the Nicklaus tournament course round 1, you go to the stadium on Friday, which seems to have the best conditions, and then you go La Quinta in round 3. PGAtour.com has all the tee times up there if you really want to do it, and FantasyNational.com will incorporate those, I believe, on Wednesday if you're trying to parse through your player pool. Good week for Fantasy National, by the way, Drew. Over $35,000 in DFS winnings alone, probably another like 10 to 15 grand, and people just betting Matt Kuchar outright. So it was a great week for Fantasy National. Were you making your lineups on Fantasy National last week?
I did a lot of my research on Fantasy National. Hand built my teams, but definitely the research.
So the tough thing about here is I talked about it a little bit with Feinberg, but I think it's really pertinent to both playing showdown lineups, betting head-to-heads, and even trying to track stats from previous years, is that shot length's only available at the stadium course. So any metric that you see is all going to be from that. Do you think this is a week just to throw out stats because they're so inconclusive about what actually happens during this tournament?
Not really. I'm definitely viewing the stats. I'm looking at recent form, their recent stats coming in this week, even though most are very small samples or at least relative to like 2019. So, you can't really look at the other courses. So I'm just kind of focusing on the stadium. I'll chalk up the other two as, guys that can make a lot of birdies. So I'm a little bit more lax there, but trying to key in on the stadium course more or less, and then just kind of recent form and course history. There's a decent bit of course history, kind of gives me the warm and fuzzies, so I like that.
So the past two winners of this event, John Rahm and Hudson Swafford, started on the La Quinta course. Before that, Jason Duffner won in 2016. He started at the tournament course. And even last year, the top 5 started La Quinta, tournament. So it's kind of crazy that you don't see any of these stadium course people pop up in the winner's circle by the end of it. So I think that's another reason. Maybe that's more influential in the outright market, not so much in the DraftKings market. But I just think it's just a narrative to talk about. Just like most of the winners here played one of the two Hawaii tournaments to begin the year. In fact, I believe it is 9 of the past 10 played one of the two Hawaii courses, and 4 of the past 5 winners actually came inside the top 20 at one of the Hawaii courses before winning this event. Does that play an influence, or is that kind of baked into your recent form from what we see early in the season?
A little bit of recent form. There's one guy that we'll probably get to here shortly that I'll ask your opinion on. But yeah, that was a pretty big narrative, those guys that play the Tournament of Champions. So I'm going to lock that away for next year. But I kind of mentioned on our podcast for this week, I'm going to try to look at guys that have played at least the week prior going into the event. Obviously with DraftKings and pricing differences, you can't always just, use that as your rule of thumb. But I think playing and getting some momentum is definitely a key throughout the season.
So let's talk about three guys off the hop, because I think they're going to be chalky, and I know what I want to do with one of them. The other two, I don't really know. One is Hudson Swafford. As I mentioned on the show with Jeff, he's my one and done pick for the week. I bet him at 55 to 1. He's already down to 40 to 1. He's a good price on DraftKings at $8,300. He's going to be uber popular this week, no doubt. He's someone that I'm still going to use anyway. What do you make of Hudson Swafford? Is there, if let's say he's going to be projected at like 24% ownership, would that make him a fade for you?
Yeah, probably. I like him. He obviously played really well tee to green last week and gained some strokes putting, but I can't pay that for a guy that I don't think is elite status yet, and or not pay that, but I can't play for that much ownership. So I mean, I'm going to play him, kind of like you said. I just won't, probably in my GBPs, if I do like a max entry stuff, he won't be in my pool if the ownership's that high.
The next guy who is shaping up to be incredibly chalky, he is down to 66 to 1 in the betting market, $7,500 on DraftKings, qualified on Monday last week at the Sony Open, turned that into a top 5. He's now in this tournament. The game sets up really well as a guy who's a preeminent ball striker, a good par 3 player, and someone who cannot putt. But hey, we've seen bad putters win this event before. It's my home brethren. Corey Connors. I can see him being like 25% owned this week. Everyone is on Corey Connors. I feel more comfortable fading him than I do with Hudson Swafford, but I do also like his prospects at the same time. What do you make of Corey Connors?
Yeah, I was initially just going to fade Corey Connors. The price, I think, is still reasonable, but higher ownership, I think, coming off the good finish last week. The one thing that concerns me as far as a fade, I think everyone knows he's a pretty good ball striker, but these greens are historically kind of the easiest to putt on throughout the season. So him being a historical bad putter, I'm kind of nervous. Like if he gets off to a decent start, he can hang around for like a top 15. But right now I'm planning to just fade him completely and just, hope for the best.
Another player coming off a hot week. In fact, he holed out 3 eagles from beyond 100 yards at one point during the Sony Open. It's Chez Reavie, someone who has a lot of experience at this course. He's very high priced. He comes in at $9,200. He too will be incredibly popular. Are you going to fade or play him?
100% fade. Not even considering it.
Really? How come?
I just don't want his form here has not been the best. Like he's never really popped, even coming off of good showings through this kind of West Coast swing. His stats look great. He's going to be popular. Little price jump. I'd rather just fade him, and if he misses the cut, great. If he finishes 30th or worse, it's still probably pretty good.
So let's round into the very top of the board. Then you got Rahm, Rose, and Cantlay. Howell and Hadwin are both above $10,000 as well, but there's a big 3, especially in the betting market here. Rahm, Rose, Cantlay. Rose is really the one that I'm really having problems wrapping my mind around. I don't think that people are going to play Justin Rose versus the other 2. So I still think that he's going to carry double-digit ownership. But Rahm is going to be incredibly popular. Rose is the number 1 player in the world, but Rahm's coming off a nice showing at the TOC. He's the defending champion at this course. He likes these California events. What do we do with Justin Rose? Is he someone to play? Or with these new irons, it doesn't seem like he's super committed to golf at this point in the season. He's really just kind of shaking off the rust at this event. Is it just a pure fade?
Yeah, I'm pretty hesitant. I think we're on the same page. His last finish at the end of the year was really good. I think he won the DP World Tour Championship, if I'm not mistaken, or he finished really well somewhere. And then he had the switch of the irons. So that makes me a little hesitant. At 11K on a course he hasn't played, I like guys around him. So I'm just going to fade Justin Rose. I think you made a good point, though. He's going to be lower owned, if not the lowest you'll see Justin Rose all year. So, it makes for a decent GPP play. He's a world number 1 for a reason, but I think I'm just going to avoid him this week.
It's interesting because I was talking with Feinberg about this and running through one and dones that, it's a weird tournament to waste anyone at a one and done because it's only $5.9 million in the purse, and everyone, if they're going to pay up, they're just going to take Jon Rahm like they did last year and hope you end up getting another win out of him. But is Rose like a sneaky one and done play, knowing that this is, like you mentioned, lowest ownership you're probably going to see on DraftKings all year, especially in a weak field like this? But in one and done, like no one is taking this guy.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely sneaky. I just don't think it's smart. I don't think this is the place to burn him. He's got no course history, so you're kind of just hoping instead of really banking on anything concrete. So he's definitely sneaky. I don't think that's the best move this week for one and dones.
All right, so a bit too sneaky. So of those top 5 guys, we probably both agree that Rom is the best play. I think so, at least. You think Rom's the best play, right?
I really like Cantley.
Okay.
I think Rom is the best play, but for $1,000 discount, I think Cantley over 10K is the best play in that range. So my ranking would be Cantley and then Rom in that 10K and over range.
I think Adam Hadwin is a full fade for me. I know he has such an immaculate course history here. This is the site when he was on La Quinta, shot the 59 2 years ago. And coming off a week where he did make the cut, but he just kept, no short game to speak of. Although if you have to rely on your short game at this course, you're not making birdies, so you will not make the cut. What do you make of Hadwin? And he's starting devastatingly enough on the stadium course, which I think will kill his ownership. If you had to go with Hadwin or Rose or Howell as a potential pivot play at low ownership, which one do you think you would go to?
It would be Rose. I'm not interested in Hadwin at all. Howell, maybe, but at 10-3, I'd probably just skip over him as well with Cantley right there. But yeah, if you had to force me to pick someone sneaky up here, it'd definitely be Rose.
So Charles Howell goes 20th, 12th, 11th the past 3 years at this event. No surprise, it's Charles Howell. He got no wins in there and a sniff of the top 10, but he's he had the win in the swing season, looked pretty good last week at the Sony. Just to look at his stats completely, he gained off the tee, he gained through approach, but he did gain 5.1 strokes putting. But still, the tee to green game was pretty solid, and he was doing it through ball striking, not around the green, which I always like to see. I just have a very tough feel because if a lot of people are going to start with Rom or Cantley for that matter, could you even really fit Charles Howell into a lineup with one of those guys? Like, it feels like he might just fly through the cracks. And I know he's overpriced, but it just seems strange that no one's going to own Charles Howell at a course where he tends to really pile up good finishes.
Yeah, I'm with you there. He should be really low owned, especially with the price jump. I do like him. I mean, he's striking the ball really well. He's almost kind of becoming a secondary Kuchar as far as the turnaround with the RSM win. He finished well last week. He was actually my one and done play last week. It worked out pretty well over the guys that took JT, but I can't jump back on board here, even with the decent course history. I think now's the time to jump off. I don't see like a better finish than we saw last week.
Have you played around with lineups at all yet, trying to figure out if you can do a Rom and Cantley starting lineup and see what that leaves you with?
I have not. I really don't want to mess with the low 6Ks, and I assume that's where I'll end up. So have you done that?
I haven't, no, because I'm still torn because if you pay for one of these guys, you don't need the win because it depends on who wins. If they come in second at chalk ownership and some guy who no one owns comes first, then it really doesn't matter. Then you still need that guy. But I just think between the three, I'll take the guy who's already played this year and just go 100% Rom over Rose and Cantley and just go that way with it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That's the other hesitation. I think Cantley just looks too good on paper. He's only played here probably 6 years ago. He was an amateur, but he's from California, a lot of good things, but his stats look great. His recent form at the end of last year looks good. But, talking at the beginning of the show, as far as guys coming off of, playing at least the prior weeks, John Rahm would be your guy. So you're probably right there. He's probably the stronger play, and I'll just jump on Cantley, and then Rahm will be my secondary play.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Rahm, probably fade the other two. The Cantley thing does really worry me because he's the prototypical skill set that you want to see here. Great off the tee, great with irons, and where you said bad putters can win this tournament. Cantley, not the greatest of all putters. The one thing that worries me, a lot of sand out there for Patrick Cantley around the greens.
That's true. Hopefully he's been working on that. The one thing I will say as far as consistency goes, like my initial read on the field is usually from like a cash mindset, just like who looks like the obvious plays or the safer plays. And just from a Cantley standpoint, he had 14 events after June last year, and he only finished outside the top 27 twice. And it was a 55th at the BMW and a 45th at the US Open. So, I mean, he looks as solid as they come as far as a 10K guy.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this on the preview to the season show, but I think he's only missed one cut in 2 years.
That could be right. I didn't look that far back, but yeah, I mean, he's been so consistent. It's been really remarkable.
All right, let's go to the 9K range with last week's runner-up, Andrew Putnam, leading the list at the very, very high end of the 9Ks. He comes in at 97. Phil is 95. Wise is 94. Abraham Answer, 93. Shez, 92. You have Piercy and List at $91,000 and $9,000. Poor Luke List, man. You know how I love to bet Luke List. He's already down to 40-1 in the market. He's 9,000 here. I feel he's a much better DraftKings play than he would be an outright bet, obviously, just because he has the biggest differential between actual finishing position and DraftKings scoring. I do like him at some of these shorter courses. He played really well at Heritage last year, played really well at Honda last year, and it is on Bermuda. And if putting doesn't, not that putting doesn't matter, but if putting isn't quite as difficult as it is at different locations, it's a great week for Luke List. So he'll be in my DraftKings pool, but of all the guys in this range, I like Answer the best. But I'm really tempted to kind of take Putnam because his long-term stats really do rate out well for this course. It's just he gained so many strokes putting last week and really disappointed with the irons, but the putting kept him in it, that if the putting regresses and the irons don't come back, he's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, I don't think he can sustain gaining that many strokes putting, and especially 2 weeks in a row. He did similar things at the Tournament of Champions, but yeah, I'm not going to go back to Andrew Putnam this week. This is, again, hopefully he's really popular. I mean, I hope he is, but I'm not going to play him. He'll be a full fade, kind of in that Reeve category for me.
Yeah, see, I don't think that he's going to be overly popular. I think a lot of people just know how to see where regression is coming from. When you gain almost 11 strokes putting in a tournament, you think to yourself, well, he's probably not going to be so hot the next week. But when you actually look at his overall numbers, like the approach, the off-the-tee numbers are garbage. But, as long as he's not spraying it into the desert the entire time, it's, going to be bad. But he scores well on par fours. He makes a ton of birdies. He's 10th in this field over the past 24 rounds in birdie or betters gained, and 14th in strokes gained approach. Like, I actually do think he sets up quite well for this course.
I think you're right. I mean, he's a decent ball striker. The other thing that does concern me is coming off of last week, when those guys kind of get into the hunt at the end, he seemed like he was really grinding out the last couple of holes, and obviously he made a lot of putts the last day. But that's still not easy to do. It still kind of wears on you mentally. So I think he might have a little bit of a letdown this week. So that's another concern for me.
Would you go with Phil at 95, guy who's won this tournament before?
No, his stats just don't look good enough. He, being out in California, I can't hate on you if you want to go there, but he's not for me in that range. I like the guy right below him.
I like Aaron Wise as well. Do you think this is a week where he can just let if he can keep the ball straight? But he was like a mess at Tournament of Champions.
He was, and that was another thing. And I didn't follow up, so I'm not really sure. But he didn't play the Sony Open. Do you know why he skipped? Like, why would you go to Hawaii for the Tournament of Champions and then skip the next week out there in Hawaii?
Not entirely sure, but I think that maybe in his mind, the next few tournaments set up much better for him. Like this one does, Torrey Pines definitely does with his skill set, and so does Phoenix, that maybe he just didn't want to play 5 weeks in a row.
Yeah, so I'll probably play Aaron Wise. He'll be a GPP play for me. I think the rough here should be down a little bit. Guys usually don't have a tough time if they miss fairways. The rough's not bad. They can still hit some greens. So not too concerned with if he sprays the driver. And then he's second in birdies or better in this field. So that's another key stat for me. I think his upside is pretty huge this week.
So Shez, Piercy, List are the bottom three. You already said you're full fade on Shez. I think that he just might be an ownership fade for me, although I am somewhat intrigued because he is playing really well. Piercy, the ball striking, immaculate, as we know. Can this guy ever make a putt? And I guess you can almost say the exact same thing for Luke List.
Yeah, I do like Piercy this week. I played him last week, and he didn't really do as much as you would have wanted. But yeah, I'm going to go back to the well at Scott Piercy. He has decent course history, so that's a plus. But yeah, in that range, he's definitely my favorite in that lower end. Luke List isn't awful, but yeah, Scott Piercy would be the one I target the most.
So like I mentioned, Abraham Answer is my favorite from the $9,000 range. Do you think that there's any merit to starting your lineups in the 9K range and just full fading everyone above $10,000?
Yeah, sure. I think if you build a decently balanced lineup starting in the 9K, you don't have to dip down too far and feel nervous about your low sevens or high sixes. So I think, even though the guys at the top range are probably most likely to win, if you stay in that middle range, that'll be where the top 20 should bunch. I think most of those guys will come from that range.
$8,000 range, Kevin Kisner is the leader in the clubhouse at $8,900. Below him, we're going to officially go to Brian Harmon, who starts at the bad course. Patton Kazire, Lucas Glover. Patton Kazire, incredibly Anderkirch, by the way. That's Tim's one and done. The glove, JJ Spawn, with some engagement swag coming in. CT Pan, Hudson Swafford, who we already talked about. Ryan Palmer, Sung J M, and Bo Hostler at $8,000. $8,000. I like Swafford the best of this, and I did like Kazire until Tim picked him. Then I was like, ugh. And I know he hasn't played in a tournament yet this year, but he starts at a better course. He's pretty cheap for where his skill set is. I like CT Pan.
I don't like CT Pan this week. I don't think this is I don't think he can take advantage of this golf course. He does better on narrower golf courses where accuracy is a priority, and I think the driving accuracy numbers at this golf course are low, but I don't think it it causes issues for guys that miss the fairway. So he hasn't really done that well here. I don't think this is really, he's got back-to-back missed cuts. And, he obviously had a coming out party last year, played really well for the majority of the year, but I don't think this is his strongest golf course. Like, his skill set should match up here.
Is there anyone else in the $8,000 range that you would go to, though? Or is this a dead area for you?
No, my favorite is going to be Mr. Lucas Glover.
Okay.
I will probably, sink or swim with Lucas Glover this week. Him and Sungjae. I am a fan of Sungjae, so we can get to that if you want. But yeah, Lucas Glover, I mean, he's been playing great all last year, kind of under the radar. Statistically looks great as well. But yeah, I think he had 41st to 17th and a 15th. 29th of 41st, the 17th and a 15th here. And then his last four events, he finished 17th, 14th, 7th, and 11th. So I really like Lucas Glover at this golf course.
Yeah, Patton Kazire actually leads the field over the past 24 rounds in par threes gained. And that is actually somewhat of it's a tough stat because it's not super predictive, but it is nice to see that he's playing the par threes really well. So he's actually not that bad of a play. I might get him into my player pool. I just worry about the curse rearing its ugly head with Patton Kazire. Why Sungjae, though? Because the irons were really off for him last week, especially on the weekend when he was looking to make a run, and it just never happened.
Yeah, he's so consistent. When you look at like some other traditional stats, he gained 7 green and regulation, or his green and regulation gain last week was 7 over the field. So his like approach numbers weren't very appetizing. Off the tee was fine. So I think like looking deeper into this golf course, that many green and regulation really opens up opportunities. He's consistent off the tee. So I think he's a really strong play this week on this golf course. I like Sungjae quite a bit all year, but especially on this golf course.
Any interest in the Spawns of the world, Ryan Palmer, who has the great course history at this event, or even someone like Bo Hostler, who's a lot of putting and short game?
Yeah, no Bo Hostler for me. Ryan Palmer, I kind of want to play just off the course history, but I can't really convince myself it's a good move. But I think he'll probably end up in my player pool for some GPPs. But yeah, I don't love it. And JJ Spawn's probably going to be a fade for me after the wedding engagement. I'm not sure I really want to spend $8,500 on JJ Spawn at this golf course.
Yeah, Spawn just seems overpriced to me. I do think that the skill set fits really well, and we always know that he tends to play a lot better on the West Coast than the East Coast, and his driving will really come in handy here, where he's not super deep off the tee, but he's deep enough and keeps it accurate enough that he's going to have a lot of easy wedge shots into a lot of these greens, especially on La Quinta and the Nicholas course. So I'm going to fade him as well. Just it makes me feel a bit squeezy when it comes down to when it comes down to bit squeezy. Don't want to get a bit squeezy. $7,000 range is the make or break this week. And there's a lot of really interesting names in here. We already talked about Corey Connors just a little bit at 7,500. He's going to be super, super high owned. Joaquin Niemann is $7,600. We haven't seen him since the swing season. He was destined to become the next big thing. And he's starting to become this player this week, at least in my mind, that everyone's like, oh, everyone's off Joaquin Niemann. Now's the time to use Joaquin Niemann. I've already bet him this week, but I think that he ends up pretty chalky on DraftKings here.
Yeah, I've kind of, I'm not really loving Joaquin Niemann right now. The middle of last year, he gained so many strokes on approach, like ball striking wise, he looked great. Looking over his like last 4 or 5 events, he's starting to trend down a little bit in strokes gained approach. So yeah, he's in my pool right now, but depending on where ownership shakes out, I might just avoid him. He's got so much talent, so I can't argue that for sure. But I think there's reasons like to maybe wait it out and see how he shows up this year. I'm
going to play him this week. I'm going to eat the chalk and take him, and that probably means I won't be able to get on Corey Connors if that's the case. Don't want to have two uber chalk from the $7,000 range. The other ones that I'm looking at, Berger is just confounding to me. because he's coming off the injury. We haven't seen him yet this year, but skill-wise, like if we got the Berger pre-injury or like what he was being priced at last year, he'd be 10K in this field.
Yeah, for sure. He's one that's going to eat at me too, because I'll probably end up playing him some GPPs, but there's really nothing to go off of. It's besides talent and kind of how he's played the last 3 years. So, yeah, Daniel Berger, I am interested in, but it's kind of throwing a dart at this point, I believe.
He's going to be a part of my GPP player pool. Probably if I play 20 lineups this week, I might have him in 3, something like that. And hopefully those are the right combinations for me. And
yeah, those 3.
Yeah, just 3. So like 15% exposure to Daniel Berger.
Gotcha. Yep.
And then the other guy right there is Richie Warinsky, who's, we talk about like hot fire irons. He's the guy.
I do like that. I mean, I'm trying to focus on guys that are hitting a lot of greens. If their approach numbers don't look the best, I mean, you got guys like, Ches Reavie that are holing out 3 wedge shots around. It really kind of escalates things and makes you look pretty bad. So, yeah, he's really solid tee to green. I mean, it's something you can. At 7,600, I definitely can go to.
So the fantasy national stat, and I included this in my key stats for the week. I also released it. So if you check out one of my columns, you can just see who the leaders are over certain periods of time in this. But opportunities gained, which are greens in regulations or a fringe in regulation from 15 feet or under. So a birdie opportunity is basically what it is. I think it's a better substitute for something like greens in regulation, which doesn't factor in the size of the greens. Like you could hit a green in regulation and be 90 feet away from the hole. That's not really doing you a whole lot of good. Opportunities gained, I really like, especially to pair it with birdies or better, even just use it in replace of greens or regulation or birdies or better gained. Neiman's first, Corey Connors is second, 7,200 and 7,100, 2 guys, and actually at 7,600 as well. So 3 guys all starting at the stadium course. Anders Albertson, Sam Ryder, and Chesson Hadley are all the leaders in that over the past 24 rounds. Do you think that's a stat that you would look at here?
Yeah, definitely. I still like to use green and regulation. I know what you're saying, but yeah, the opportunities gained is pretty big. That'll definitely be helpful for the last couple events with the guys that hit their irons and had opportunities. I think it kind of, depending on how you look at the putting as well, it kind of goes hand in hand with recent form as a whole, and then recent form is just ball striking and hitting greens within 15 feet of the pin. So
yeah,
it's a good balance.
Yeah, it can really lead you to the guys that are generating a ton of opportunity, just not converting those putts over. I think that's why it's very helpful.
Yeah, I like the reason why I like looking at green and regulation as a whole, even if it's, they have 50 feet, it's not good, but it really minimizes mistakes. There's guys like you'll see Justin Rose will go rounds and he'll hit 16 or 17 greens in regulation. And maybe half of those were inside of 20 feet, but he's minimizing a lot of mistakes. So I just like to look at that as a whole. It's not like an end all be all, but I do like seeing a bigger picture for a guy hitting greens.
So who else in the $7,000 range do you think that you're going to key on? Because this is where you're going to get 2 rounds at a Pete Dye course. You know what that means. I'm back on my man. See, woo! Kim.
Yeah, he's on my list. I'll have a little bit of a sprinkle of Mr. Siwoo. The guy I do like quite a bit, and I didn't check maybe you can let me know where he is teeing off, but I want to play some Danny Willett this week at 7,800.
I like Will. He just hasn't played yet this year is the problem. And I was looking at him in the betting market, and Feinberg said he bet him at 80-1. And I think his current Masters odds are like 60-1. It's really funny. Yeah.
I was trying to look at some Masters odds earlier, and things are escalating quickly. Kuchar's wins. He's dropping a lot of things. But, yeah, Danny Willett, he's coming off a really good showing, I think, in it might have been Korea, somewhere at the end of last year. And, I mean, he was 16th in driving distance, 12th in driving accuracy, and 3rd in green and regulation. That was the DP Tour Championship in November. So
yeah, he won that.
He did. He won that. So he did not play this year. You were correct. But I like if Danny Willett starts to turn around for this year, I like playing him here. And I don't think he'll have any ownership. I think people just skip over him, or like you said, haven't seen that he has played this year and just miss him.
He starts at La Quinta this week.
Perfect.
So he's in a great spot for the starting point. I don't know if a Birdie Fest is a Danny Willett type of track is the thing. It'd be like if Brendan Grace was here. I kind of lump those two into a category to themselves. I think that Willett at his peak is a little bit better. Obviously, Brendan Grace, a bit more consistency when it comes to this. But if the winning score is going to be like minus 23, I mean, I would want to take Danny Willett in an event where like minus 11 would be the winning score.
That's a good point. Yeah. didn't really weigh that too much. I was just looking at guys that most people probably would miss, and that looked pretty good. But yeah, I'm about to look into that more. He's not really known as a birdie machine.
No, but I mean, his skill set versus a lot of the guys that he's around is significantly higher. So generally, when you
Yeah.
do that, it's a lot like Berger in this situation too. So maybe I will end up taking some Danny Willett, almost deploy him in the same way that I'm deploying Daniel Berger. And like I said, if I don't take Connors, there's a lot of ownership for my lineups that opens up that I don't need to have 50% Danny Willett in order to make an impact. I could have 10, 15% and be massively overweight to the field. So the other guys from down here, Bronson Burgoon was one that really leapt out to me. Anytime that you're going to have a birdie fest, Burgoon's always a good play.
Yep. He's on my list. He never really, I don't know about you, but he doesn't really pop statistically ever. I've been on him a couple of times in the fall, and he's really done pretty well. I mean, it's sporadic, but there's nothing concrete. It's like, man, he's just so solid. It's not like Anders Albertson right above him. I think statistically he's popping for everybody, but I think Bronson is a decent play when you're talking about scoring. This is going to be a golf course that he should be able to bomb it and take advantage.
So for me, in my statistical model over the past 24 rounds, you hit on the guy, Anders Albertson. He ranks out number 11th. Bronson Burgoon actually number 10 in that statistical model. So I liked him anyway. That this is sort of like confirmation bias. So I'm going to be in on him. What about like the Bud Collies and Harold Varner, sort of those middling tier PGA players we just haven't seen yet? And Burgoon is kind of in that same boat since he didn't play at the Sony Open.
Yeah, Bud Colley is fine. He really played well at the end of last fall with the like Mayakoba coming back from injury. I think I faded him in every event he played in the fall, and he really played pretty solid. So I'm interested in Bud Colley a little bit, and then kind of like we mentioned at the start of the show, George Cunningham down at the low sevens is another guy I'm trying to. Even though he's going to start on the stadium course, I still like. I mean, he hasn't played that much, so we don't know his upside, but I feel like he's got the skill set to really, take the PGA Tour by storm this year.
Yeah, Cunningham is really interesting. Maybe next week or the week after could be the time to jump on him. I think if I was going to go with one of these stadium guys, I would prefer Sam Ryder over Cunningham, but I just looked down a little bit. Do we have any faith that Ryan Armour keeps this going into this week?
Yeah, I plan to play him. His course history doesn't look good, but I'm trying to make the narrative in my mind that, he's playing consistent. He's going to keep it going. And he really hasn't done anything that I would say is drastic. Like, I feel like some of these guys, like you talk about Corey Connors or Andrew Putnam, these guys have done something miraculous last week, gained a bunch of strokes putting or a bunch of strokes on approach. I feel like Armour just kind of plugs along and doesn't wear himself out. So I'm willing to go back to Ryan Armour this week.
The final guy from this range, I guess you can throw Andrew Landry into this as well. He actually played 2 of the Sony events and came second in a playoff to Rahm here last year. He just hasn't looked very good to start the year. But the other one is Dylan Fratelli. He's a skilled guy. He's an up-and-comer, and I don't want to say that he's he's sort of like the homeless man's Jon Rahm, but he has that sort of skill set. He just gains a ton of strokes off the tee, and you hope this is one of the weeks where he can get hot with the irons.
Yep, Fratelli, I don't mind. He's coming off of last week's showing. I mean, didn't really do anything on the greens, and ball striking wise, I think he's up there. He's definitely, as much world-class play he's done over the European Tour, and he's bounced around the PGA Tour. He's probably one of the most solid plays in that mid 7K range you could probably bank on. I do like Siwoo and stuff like that, but Dylan's up there as far as talent.
Well, Siwoo is just such a crapshoot. You either get good Siwoo or you get bad Siwoo. And if you get bad Siwoo, he's going to score like negative DraftKings points. So that's never good. But I think if you're going to pivot off of Corey Connors, the guys around there that you can go to, he's $7,500. You can take Siwoo. Fratelli, I might think is a bit safer. Go up to Neiman and Werenski a little bit, or even Danny Willett, like you mentioned. I think those are the guys to go to if you want to get off Corey Connors. Like Charlie Hoffman's not really cutting it for me this week. He's been bad. For a while. Yeah, he has.
Yep, not interested in Charlie Hoffman. There's really not a lot. Like, there's guys you can maybe make a case for, like Brian Gay off of last week. Well, there's some guys.
But Brian Gay was basically Putnam. Like, they tied in strokes gained putting. They were both at 11, and Brian Gay still wasn't good.
I know. I watched. He was on my lineup on Saturday, and he was like +4 through 6, and then ended up shooting like -3. It was unreal. Like, how many birdies did this guy make? So. Not really thrilled about that, but I mean, there's guys around him like Jason Duffner. I'm kind of getting interested in just getting on him low ownership before people jump back on if he's trending up. So there's decent plays in this range. It's just a matter of kind of avoiding the landmines.
I have one more play in the $7,000 range, right at $7,000, and this never feels good to do. And I'm not going to say I'm going all in on this guy, but he's going to be the bottom end of a lot of my lineups. He's really the only guy who sticks out to me as someone who's really good, played well last week, and just couldn't get the putter going. But and not the greatest course history, but it's Rory Sabatini, Slovakia's own Rory Sabatini, at $7,000 gained. What was it? Let's see here. 1.7 strokes off the tee last week, 4.6 through approach, gained around the green, lost 4 strokes putting. And when you start digging into like 400 to 450 yard par 4s, Rory Sabatini tends to play those incredibly well. In fact, over the past 24 rounds, he's the best in the field. He's top 15 in sand saves over that time. He's top 10 in par 5 scoring. That is setting up to be a letdown for me. And he has that fantastic Nicholas Stadium La Quinta run to start his tournament before he gets to the weekend, if he gets to the weekend. But I just happen to like Rory Sabatini a lot.
I do too. I wouldn't say I like him a lot, but off of last week, his stats look good. He lost strokes putting. Like, that's a good combo. So I'm in on Rory Sabatini this week.
Is there anyone else right at that, besides George Cunningham, at that 7,000 number that you can see playing? Because I'm just looking at like Streelman, maybe. Sean O'Hare has like a weird course history here. I wrote him up last year. I think he made the cut last week too. That maybe I'll throw him into like 2 lineups out of 20 and just see what I get from him. Although he made the cut last week and was a disaster on the weekend, so maybe not. But he was the only one that piqued my interest.
Yeah, there's really no one down there at the low 7s that I'm interested in playing. I'm not going to Ollie. I didn't go to him last week. I don't plan to jump back on that for Caddy's sake.
This is an anti-Ollie show. Some of these shows out there, they're very pro-Ollie. I am anti-Ollie because fading him has just been like, I wouldn't say it's won me money, but it certainly hasn't lost me money fading Ollie Schneider-Jans over the past year or so. So $6,000 level, what do you see? Is there a guy that you kind of have to play from down here? Because if you're going to play Rahm and you want someone else good, you're going to eventually have to dig down here. And you get 3 rounds from these guys. So it's not as devastating if they miss the cut after 3 rounds as it would be in another tournament.
Yeah, there's really not a lot down here that stands out. There's Dominic Bazzelli, kind of faded last week, and he did a lot of damage on the greens, which is kind of a red flag. But I'm interested in going back to him at 6,400. I feel like it's just too cheap with a guy that's coming off of last week's finish, or at least playing last week decently. So he's in there. And then I mentioned Sebastian Munoz, but if he's going to play the stadium course, I probably won't do that. He was in the same category as Bazzelli, kind of gained strokes putting, didn't really do a ton tee to green, or at least nothing miraculous. So there's really not a lot down here that that stands out to me. They did a really good job with their pricing.
So the thing with Munoz, I'm usually on Munoz for like first round leader because he can make birdies in bunches, and if the putter gets hot, he starts making everything. And we saw that over the weekend. But he lost strokes on approach last week. He gained 5 strokes tee to green. Almost 3 of those were off the tee, which is nice. But the short game is where it all came. Gained 4 strokes putting and 3.4 around the green. Like, if you're gaining 3.4 strokes around the green at this tournament, you are going to miss the cut.
Yeah. I saw your tweet yesterday. I think, or you may have mentioned on your podcast. If you're missing greens and having to gain strokes around the green, you're probably not going to finish very well. That's not a good golf course to be missing greens.
Well, I looked at the average winner from the past 6 years and how everything rates out for them in terms of where they gain strokes. Now, it's tough because you can only see it from the tournament course, but that is the harder course. So let's go with that for the moment. That the average winner, the past 6 winners, the average winner lost strokes around the green.
Yeah, crazy. They must be hitting a lot of greens, and the one they're missing, they're not getting up and down.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Like, they're just not missing greens, so they get so few opportunities to take a shot from around the green that doesn't really matter what they do. That if they bogey, everyone's going to bogey a few holes. It happens.
Yep, I'm with you there. The one guy I will mention down in the 6K, like there's in the mid 6s and below, I probably just will cross out them unless you have some sleeper that you can throw my way. But I think Sam Saunders is okay.
Saunders could be okay. I like Svensson. I know he was the first round leader last week and then kind of like cratered for 2 rounds in a row, but he wasn't all that bad by the end of it. He actually made a nice little run on Sunday that I think if you're going to dig down this deep, he's my favorite of the 65 and below guys.
I was running Svensson by you last fall. You've had so many shows, you probably forgot.
No,
but
I know, I remember. And like even statistically, like over the past 24 rounds, in the key stats that I ended up using, Svensson rates out 26th. Like he's top 10 in opportunities gained. He's top 10 in par 3 scoring over that time. Not the best on par 4s, which is kind of critical here, but he's top 20 in strokes gained approach as well.
Yeah, his proximity looks pretty good. I can get behind Svensson. I didn't look that deep because I saw him fade after the first round last week. But yeah, I mean, when you still look at the longer term stats, he's fairly consistent. And 6,500, you can't really ask for too much more.
Alex Prue was another one that I was looking at.
I looked into him, but I didn't see anything. I'll pull it up to look at it real quick. But yeah, he's gaining strokes tee to green, decent. But he's just like, even when he doesn't gain anything putting, and when he gains decent strokes tee to green, like the Sanderson Safeway, he can't even crack a top 20. So I feel like the upside is limited. I guess for a $6,000 guy, you're not asking for that much, but I don't know. I just don't see the upside for me to invest.
Grayson Murray is down there. You like Grayson?
Yeah, no thanks. His course history looks good, but he was a quick X. His recent form and his injury and all the stuff going around him, I'm not going to play any Grayson Murray this week.
So who are the guys then at the upper $6,000 range? You got like, if you're just trying to pin down who could potentially pop here and are not starting at the wrong course, you got like Johnny question marks finished inside the top 10 at this event last year. Like Sam Burns is down to 6,900. I believe he just missed the cut, I believe, on the number last week, but he's up and down. Ryan Blom had a first like 2 really good rounds to start last week and then was piss poor over the weekend when I jumped on him. But like Vaughn Taylor, Scott Stallings, Tom Lovelady, like these are just guys that generate a lot of birdie opportunities. Whether they can cash in, who knows?
Bobby Garrigus, he's probably going to be in my GPP pool. He can pop and make a ton of birdies.
Bobby
6,800 is not awful. Yeah, check that one out.
How has he been at this course over the years?
Pretty decent. I just looked at it. He's had a second way back, and then his last 3 finishes was 57th, 17th, 49th. Like, not bad.
That's not
Game
horrendous.
strokes tee to green. No, it looks decent. It's I see green. It's always a good color.
Yeah, so I think I'll go with Prue here, and I'll update. My cheat sheet will appear on dkplaybook.com. It's free. You can go click on it and find a lot of this information in there in very jot note form. But I'll definitely go with Prue, and I'll definitely go with Svensson, and then I'll wrap my mind around some of those other guys that we just talked about. Maybe Blom. I'll narrow it down to like Blom, Garrigus, Saunders. For whatever reason, stats love Cam Davis, and every time I play him, he fucking sucks.
Yeah. I jumped on him one time. I think you recommended it, and then I vowed never again. But maybe that'll turn around this week.
Last week, he lost an impressive 5 strokes on approach, so I'm not going to go to him this week. We'll see how that ends up working out. Probably fade Sam Burns. Do I always get talked into Vaughn Taylor? Like, why do I always feel like I'm betting him first round leader? What is it with Vaughn Taylor that I like? Because I don't even know.
He'll go in stretches. His ball striking's really good. You watch him swing. He doesn't miss any fairways. He hits a bunch of greens. His iron game's pretty solid. His recent form's just terrible. But if you look back at like the middle of every other season, he'll go in stretches where, he's inside the top 20, 50% of 10 events. Like, it's crazy. So I don't know why you're too high on him, but that's definitely what I see looking back a couple of years.
All right, I'm going to cross him off the list here. And
Yeah.
now I'm just going to look into Scott Stallings just a little bit. Hasn't played since the RSM. He's popped here twice.
Scott Stallings, yeah.
He's also been popped for steroids too. So
I know you mentioned that last time. I didn't even know that. I don't know how I missed that.
Well, look at the guy. I mean, Daniel Summerhays never got caught, but he is yoked. But like Stallings is basically doing a bodybuilding show before the event. Cuts down some of that weight, has a sandwich, and goes and plays golf.
I mean, I definitely can see it. I never really saw that. The one above him, John Catlin. You mentioned him at the start of the show? I think you mentioned it yesterday on the podcast. Are you going to play him, or what did you see with him at all?
I actually talked to Wiley a little bit about him, and I'll just bring it up because I thought it was that's one of the great things about Wiley. He'd be very to the point on some of these things. Because I asked him, I was just like, because we were talking about Munoz. Now I don't like Munoz. He loves Munoz this week. I asked him about John Catlin, and I was like, I saw he's almost top 100 in the world. And he just goes, yeah, he had some buzz at the CIMB last year, but he's like, this is the PGA Tour. Like, if you're 48th at the South African Open, and how good can you be? It's like
That's true.
It's a pretty concise way to put it. He did win 3 times on the Asian tour last year, but I don't know. I think if you're dipping into this range, you might just be doing it wrong. So I don't want to recommend a whole like 5 guys, because then all of a sudden I'm playing 5 guys in the $6,000 range. I think I'll stick with Svensson, maybe a bit of Prue, and that might be it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, there's only a handful of guys. Like I said, Sam Saunders is up there. And who was that? Bazzelli down kind of the middle range. And then I'll add Svensson to my list. Thank you for pointing him out. I don't hate that.
Yeah, the Boz, I believe he was 3rd here. Whatever year Hadwin shot the 59, Bazzelli was in the mix that year as well. 3rd, because then he had a good Valspar as well, and like these 2 events really correlated because they had super weak field. Hadwin won, he was 2nd here, and then he won Valspar. Cantley came 2nd at Valspar that year, and I think Bazzelli was 3rd or 4th or something.
2017, that was the year Hudson Swafford won. He finished at 17 under.
Tough
pretty
year.
good.
Of the players in the field, because par 3s are somewhat difficult, and over the past 24 rounds, the guys have been playing par 3s really well. Kazire, number 1, Rose, Blom, Bud Colley, Andrew Putnam, Harold Varner III, who we didn't even bring up, and maybe we should have a discussion about, Svensson, Martin Laird, Burgoon, Anders Albertson, and your main man, George Cunningham, although he only has 8 rounds to draw from.
Yeah, not a big sample size.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to talk about Varner, I'm not going to be playing him. His showing last year wasn't great, and then he hasn't really done enough for me as of late for me to kind of jump on there. But I don't hate it. I mean, his tee to green game is so solid. RSM, he finished well, but the miscut last year, I feel like maybe this course doesn't suit his eye.
Yeah. All right, let's talk Showdown for a second, because I think that the prevalent strategy in Showdown this week is just going to be take everyone who's playing La Quinta, and I don't think that's a bad strategy whatsoever. In fact, it's super sharp. Some people will game theory themselves into taking people at the stadium course, and maybe they get lucky on one of the days that it plays super easy, or whenever the good guys are at the stadium course and they light it up. But I think the move in Showdown is to target Nicklaus course and just roll with that.
Yeah, because everyone will jump to the La Quinta. So like the Nicklaus course really wasn't that much harder. It was half a stroke more difficult technically than La Quinta the last couple of years. So yeah, either one of those, I think you can target both. And if you want to weight yourself heavier on the Nicklaus, that'll probably give you some type of ownership leverage.
Yeah, and I do think that the best starting point for the players this week because of the weather is going to be on the Nicklaus course. Again, just go to pgatour.com. You can find all the T-splits on there. They'll be uploaded to Fantasy National a little bit later on, and you can do that. But I think that mixing, like, would you ever just like build team stacks of a particular course? Because we saw this last week and it kind of came out of nowhere that there was a huge tee advantage last week. If you just played guys in like the late wave on Thursday who ended up being the early wave on Friday, like that, I think it was like a stroke and a half better after the first 2 rounds. The only guy who really came out of it well was Putnam, only because he was putting so well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think there is some type of strategy behind picking guys all in the same golf course, but it's a different vibe too. I don't know how far these are spread out, but generally speaking, the guys will show up and they're fairly, secluded. They don't have all the big trailers everywhere. So I think there is something, even, less tangent that the guys will play well in one course. You could probably stack them and get away with it.
Yeah, I think the best move here is just overall fade as many guys starting on the stadium course as possible and mix and match between La Quinta and Nicklaus course coming up. But I do like that Nicklaus course start for the rotation that it goes into based on the weather as well. So that would be my thoughts on this tournament. But I think that the blind stacking, I might just start doing it at every tournament, because no one saw the Sony one coming. Like, and there wasn't even a distinct wind advantage. Like, I don't really know what happened, but it did happen. And if you had played it that way, you would have done really well.
Yeah, I don't always correlate the tee times. I mean, I didn't see any wind difference. I didn't see that it was going to pick up and then die. Yeah. So, I mean, it's probably something we should look into more, or at least focus on a little bit more. But yeah, I just did not, and I got burned by it for sure.
It seems like one of those things that you would have to be playing a lot of lineups to actually do. Like, even if I'm doing like 20 lineups, let's say, do I really want to allocate 3 and 3 to just a distinct T-split instead of really focusing on my player pool? Probably not. But I think if I was playing 50 and I did like 5 and 5, that would make more sense. So I think it's for like the super mass multi-entry type people.
I think so. Like guys will use optimizer, they'll run groups and stuff like that. It's probably smart. I would probably recommend getting your player pool first and then looking at the stuff. Like you talked about the stadium course, guys teeing off there on Thursday. That would lean me to maybe a guy I was on the edge about maybe taking him out of my player pool, but I wouldn't start the week off and let's just take this wave out. And I don't think that's a good way to go about it.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the winning lineup in the Pat Mayo Experience Open, from last week. Oil_man, like I mentioned, was the winner of that event. Do you know what the lineup was, Mr. Drew?
You posted it, but I did not see what it was.
655 points. It was a runaway winner. It would have done really well in a lot of the larger GPPs as well. Ryan Armour at 6.8%, Matt Kuchar, Andrew Putnam, Shez Reavie, Justin Thomas, and Ian Poulter were the plays. I mean, I had 5 of those guys in my lineup and didn't do quite as well. Sometimes it's just about hitting that right combination. But do you see how he worked his way to get this lineup? Because you start with JT and then you immediately drop. And the guy that really is the differentiator is Ryan Armour. Everyone else is kind of chalky.
Yeah, for sure. I think you start with Justin Thomas and you start going down. I think he fell on all the obvious plays, it seems like. And those are one of the lineups that are the worst because you look back on it and you think, man, I'm an idiot. That was such an easy build. But yeah, that's pretty chalky for the most part besides Armour, which really wasn't that far-fetched. I mean, he's been playing pretty solid.
Yeah, and Armour turns out to be the big difference in all of this. But I think this lineup kind of shows, and we saw this with the U.S. Open Millionaire Maker last year, where you just, people talk so much about being contrarian and building their lineups. Oh, this guy's going to be 2-owned. This guy's going to be 2-owned. That they start making lineups with bad people in them. That I think that this sort of contrarian lineup makes a lot of sense. It's a bunch of chalky guys and just one guy that no one's going to own who you like. I think that's probably the better way to do it. When you built your Masters team, the one that won, how chalky versus contrarian was it? Because if you had Patrick Reed, obviously that was the contrarian play because he won. That really put you over the top. But how low owned did you have other guys on that team?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact percentage, but I think it was a 4-2 split. 4 guys were around 20%. And again, the Masters is such a small field. It's hard to really get away from the chalkier names, but I think it was 4 guys that were around 20%. And then the last 2 were at 10% and 8%, something like that. Charlie Hoffman and Russell Henley.
Yeah. So I think that people overanalyze this a little bit, that this is probably, I don't want to, because we're going to look back at some of these weeks and it's going to be 5 guys that be oh shit, no one played them. But I think this is a very interesting way to go about it. I like your 4-2 strategy. I think that's the best way to build lineups, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because there's a lot of weeks that if you go back and look at the actual optimal lineup and there's $2,800 left on the table. But most people are building close to that salary cap. So you can kind of get an idea of where people are falling down the line. So, you don't need to get too cute trying to build these, 5% owned guys into your lineup. You just start from the top, you kind of build your pool and then start piecing together. I don't think it's that hard to get away from the chalk as long as, you kind of understand where people are falling along the way. So yeah, it's a puzzle. That's all it is.
Yeah, and you can reverse engineer. You could reverse engineer that lineup pretty easily. Like we said, you start with Justin Thomas. Kuchar was going to be popular, and he was sort of mid-price. I think he was in the 8,000s, I think, last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that he was a very logical guy to go to because you would have a really bad bottom end if you went to the $9,000 area after spending up on JT, and then you just hit that middle 7 range, and that's what he did, and that ended up working out. The optimal lineups, like you mentioned last week, Rick Gaiman, last week's guest at DFS On Demand on Twitter, tweeted out the 3 optimal lineups. One used a salary cap of 48,100. One of them used a salary cap of 47,100, and the other one used a salary cap of 47,900. So almost at least $2,000 left on the table on each of these, which is people just don't do. So it's tough. Right. When you start reverse engineering an optimal lineup, the optimal lineup was Kuchar, Leishman, Reavie, Putnam, Stewart, and Hudson Swafford. No one was going to have that lineup.
Yeah, that's some of the tough dilemmas in cash games. And I don't think you have to follow it as closely in golf, but football is a little bit like that in basketball. But you say you get a guy that's real cheap and he's going to be, close to 35 or 40% owned, and he's got a really strong chance of hitting value. Those are the ones that it's almost tough to fade, especially in cash games. You kind of just go with the crowd and take the free square. I think golf's a little bit different. You don't always get those huge ownerships. But still, I think once you build your pool and you start getting a feel for how you want to structure it, you'll start to notice if, man, this one here it fell perfectly into 50,000. And I think all these guys are going to be 18 plus. So that's probably one you want to rework.
I will say Rick actually just tweeted at me. He said it's only 1 year's worth of data, but last year, if you played you really wanted to play the stadium course on Saturday, 0 top 10s from anyone who started at the stadium course and ended at the Nicholas course. So that this week, anyone who starts at La Quinta will play the stadium course on Saturday and Sunday. It actually seemed to help fuel the players on Sunday who ended up making the cut better than it did on the Saturday. And I guess that would make sense. Like, can you speak to that at all? Like, just playing the same course twice in a row might help you a little bit, especially if the conditions are similar?
Yeah, you get a little bit more accustomed to it. I think also on your tweet, as far as guys that are playing the stadium on Saturday trying to make the cut, if they're really trying to fight to make the cut and they played the 2 easier courses, they probably haven't been playing that well anyway. So I wouldn't really worry about it. But, getting off to a good start and then, you're getting in contention on Saturday, you're playing the stadium course. Now you go into Sunday, you're in contention. Like, it's just a different mindset than starting on Thursday playing a tougher golf course. You're just more involved. You're invested into every shot. A lot goes into it mentally that you don't see statistically from a Thursday to Saturday time frame.
Drew Mathews, fantasygolfbag.com, the Fantasy Golf Bag podcast, and the winner of the 2018 Masters Millionaire Maker on DraftKings. Tell everyone what's going on over on the pod and on the site this week.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Fantasy Golf Bag podcast is available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, all the main podcast directories. You can find all our content at fantasygolfbag.com. And one thing we added this year, kind of inspired by Pat himself, we're doing a Wednesday night live stream talking through some ownerships, some last minute player thoughts. You can find that on twitch.tv/redkachik. And yeah, it's about an hour-long show and just kind of go through the final preparations before Thursday's lineup lock. So pretty good stuff over there right now.
Once I return full-time from my paternity leave, that I will re-engage the Wednesday afternoon chat with Reed Fowler. That will be around like 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. So if people have questions, don't be afraid. That show will return probably right after football season, after the Super Bowl is over. Then we'll have more time on our hands. We don't have to focus so much on football during the week and really dedicate towards golf. But yeah. That's going to happen. There's going to be none this week, no update this week, but the cheat sheet will appear for DraftKings on DKPlaybook.com late on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, the betting cheat sheet will be up on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme. So remember to go check that out for all finalized bets. Do you have any bets you like here?
No, I was trying to tail some of yours yesterday. Usually I look at it late on Tuesday. I'm not one to jump on stuff quick, but a lot of your guys already dropped to like under 50. So I'm kind of missed the boat there. But yeah, I probably won't have anything as far as a betting card until later tonight or early Wednesday.
So the only ones that I'm really on, I mentioned Sam Ryder on yesterday's show, and he's obviously starting at the course that you don't want him to start at. Really should have played a factor. I totally forgot about it yesterday when I did the show, and then I was like, oh yeah. And it turns out that anyone starts at the course generally does not win, but 140 to 1 with the each way. Worth a shot for me, I guess. The other ones I put Sabatini on there as well. I think is 175. They're just more like joke bomb bets, but the big ones, Answer and Swafford are two who've seen their odds plummet. Swafford's down from 55 to 40. Answer's down to 35. I'd still play them both at that number. I got them at 55 and 40. Neiman is still at 60. I took him, and I took Siwoo because I always take Siwoo. I'm thinking about adding one more, maybe just keeping it light this week. Is there anyone that really stands out that you think could be worth? Is Berger worth a shot? I think he's 55 on 365. He's 66 on Bovada. Would you take a gamble on him?
Yeah. What's the top 5 or top 10 on that? You guys get the each ways. It's easier to calculate, but yeah, he's 66 on Bovada, but I have to look into that. He's probably worth a stab. I do have a couple bets in early. I didn't even realize. I took Sam Ryder, like you mentioned. I took George Cunningham. Instead of a top 10, I went for it. 200 to 1, George Cunningham. And then Sung J M, I went ahead and threw it's 50 to 1, so maybe a little short in your eyes, but I do like Sung J M's potential this year, so went ahead and bet that.
Yeah, I had Sung Jae at 90 to 1 with the each way last week. I was hoping he was going to make a run and get a backdoor top 5 and really just kind of pound in a cash. I think it would have paid 17.5 to 1, something like that. It would have been nice, but obviously Sunday did not quite go as well as I wanted for Sung Jae. If you are out there and want to get into the PME Open DraftKings Listeners League. Tweet at DraftKings. You tell them to make that tournament bigger. And remember to subscribe to the audio podcast, even if you're a video viewer, so you can just get access to that link. And it helps me out. It's more downloads and listens for me. So it's win-win. You can still watch the show with Feinberg and I and this show on YouTube if you'd like, or the DK Live app. But, just go download the podcast as well. Big help. Smash the like button for the episode. Leave your DraftKings handle and tell me your 2 favorite plays from below $7,000. I'm Svensson, and who was the other guy that I said? Prue for me, underneath $6,000. So if you leave your 2 in there, you're in a draw for $20 DK dollars. It might be a bit late next week getting out the winners, but you will eventually be credited and told you are a winner of $20 DK dollars. Thank you all for watching. Good luck this week at the Desert Classic. I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!